What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Behind the Food podcast. Today we have Isaiah from the Pepper Pot,
Hell
um,
yeah.
who's honestly one of me and Daniel's favorite businesses to watch and enjoy. You guys have incredible food, by the way.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
and I also have my co-host here, Daniel, as usual. So, Isaiah, I usually like to start this off with just like tell us about how you got started. Like what is it that like made you start the Pepper Pot? Like how did it like get going? That sort of thing.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. Love the podcast, love the platform, and appreciate the opportunity. I think to start, honestly, I would have to, highlight my grandparents. Um, my my grandparents were in the food industry, in the service industry, working festivals and just doing different events and making food at home and selling to the community back in Guyana. And they had 9 children, my mom being one of them. And all the children had different responsibilities in helping with preparation, baking, cooking, grabbing supplies. And so it was a family effort um, for her at an early age. And then as we transitioned to America, moved to New York, where my mom was a teen. I was born in Brooklyn, and they kind of continued that effort of just going out on like Flatbush, different parts of Brooklyn, and just offering different Caribbean food. Chick curry, chickpeas, chana was what's what my family was known for, and things like jerk chicken and stews and things like that. And as we came down to Nashville, there was kind of the same opportunity. And so we moved to Nashville when I was young. And my mom would, do catering orders from home and, just like her childhood, we would be responsible for helping with some of the prep. We would be, you know, folding pastries and mixing ingredients and just really supporting, her side hustle. And so one day it became difficult for her to, um, find full-time employment that could cover, all of her expenses as she became a single mom with three kids, 3 boys. And so, she decided to step out on faith and go full-time. And so, this was, probably 2008, 2009, that she kind of made her first real run at it to do this full time, create a business from it, and really kind of develop a concept. I was in high school going into college at the time. So of course I'm thinking I know everything. I'm like, I'll be ahead of marketing. And so, I kind of helped her with all of the development things and getting her online and, all those things around that time. And so she's had multiple ventures, gone into restaurants with family and friends, and had food trucks and a food trailer and some stationary things, taking a break here or there. Our newest iteration of the business has been in 2020 during COVID. Everyone was furloughed, and we were just kind of looking for something to do. For her, it was to get back into the food industry and the service industry full time. For me, I was in corporate management or retail management, and so I kind of stepped away from that and really just recommitted to helping her explore her passion. And so, since 2020, we've basically founded the Pepper Pot. We started as a ghost kitchen concept in Citizens over in West Nashville. It's where I met you guys in different times. But it was very new and interesting. People wanted food, but there had to be a no contact, contactless experience, and so that was new and different for everyone. We got on delivery platforms and really kind of took everything online to engage with our customers, and so that was a new experience for us all. Since then, we've um, built and bought a food truck. We have a takeout location in Germantown. We do corporate catering for places like HCA, Vanderbilt, and other local corporations. And then we have a monthly supper club that we provide a chef-driven experience to offer, what it looks like to experience food in Guyana.
Yeah, I got to attend your last supper club. I was Isaiah's guest, and it was fantastic. It was dope. Really cool vibe. He's got a really interesting concept where it's like we're not doing a restaurant. We're doing like a pop up in a space that allows us to almost create a one-time restaurant in a way, which is really unique. It's almost like each one's a one of one, which is really, really cool. And last time it was your mom's birthday celebration. That was also really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, so when you guys do that, is the whole goal to create like a family dinner style experience?
Definitely. The supper club is communal. It's familiar, it really kind of speaks to our core values like heritage, tradition. It feels like that family reunion where you get to see those cousins, from, that you don't get to see often. And we really love to cherish that experience. You get complimentary beverage, you get multi courses. We cover most people's dietary restrictions, and so we're really offering up a full complement of a familiar vibe is really what we're trying to drive home.
Definitely. So I think I met you when you were just starting the ghost kitchen thing in Citizen, right? And I kind of, I was food trucking at the time pretty heavily. And at that time, our mutual buddy BJ was getting out of the food trucking business. So it allowed a really interesting kind of like shared resource situation where BJ's truck, got sold to you, and you guys really kind of did a lot of TLC to that truck because it needed it to get it back on the road. What was because this wasn't the first time you guys went from like doing something in a restaurant to truck. Like you guys had done this before. What was it like compared to the first iteration when you had your trailer versus the second time where you had an actual mobile truck that you didn't have to have like a second vehicle pulling it around and you could operate all kind of self-contained?
Yeah. I think the difference was I was fully involved. I think that our first run, I was I'd set my mom up with Square in 2012, in 2013. So I was like, hey, this is your POS here. I was kind of just in systems and just kind of helping with marketing and some advertising. And I was, young in college, just doing my thing. And so I just kind of helped out sparingly, but didn't really understand the business. And so this time around, I really had to have an understanding and connect with the health department and Metro Water and, the fire department and all the different elements that really go into, being certified and permitted and, having all those things dialed in. And so that was my main responsibility. And being compliant in those things. And so that was a learning experience that, I'm appreciative of now being on the other side of how we could, basically start something and grow it and, kind of build a following and fan base around. And so yeah, that was probably the most interesting part was just having all of those conversations and making sure that, we were compliant and executing things, on a food truck. And I had never consistently driven a vehicle that large. So, what that was going to be like. And obviously, I leaned on people like yourself, Daniel, and even BJ, when we bought the truck from him, like kind of put you guys into like a mentor position to really just field questions, get ideas, develop our menu, try to figure out what equipment we needed, and just really, get a grasp of what the market looked like for food trucking in general.
Yeah, that's one of the things I like about Nashville is there's a really tight-knit food community here, and we all support each other. I don't know if it's like that in other cities, but there's a really interesting continuum that happens between like the citizen kitchens and their ability to like provide a platform for new people, new chefs, and then the established chefs that have a following, right, that help put people on and build exposure. And then like you've got almost like these like godfathers like BJ who like, helps people, get into the trucking game and, help them get exposure and get into good gigs and things. So we have a really interesting, really supportive kind of ecosystem here in Nashville that really happened organically. It's not like it was planned. It just kind of occurred. So I think one thing that I found tricky when I first started getting trucking was bringing kind of a new cuisine to Nashville. And people asking me all the times, what's an empanada? They didn't even understand. So you've got a lot of really unique items on your menu that, you've done a lot of things where you've kind of like tweaked it a little bit to make it a little more relatable sometimes. So I'm kind of curious about like the educational aspect of like explaining to people what Guyanese food is, right? And I think it's one of the coolest things about food trucks. So talk to me about like your experience educating customers at the window every day about what is this food? What is it about? Why should I buy it?
Definitely. That is a hurdle. That's definitely, something that we try to be intentional about and to diversify. But then also as we diversify, coming back to the customer with enough information to make a quick decision. Because obviously the customer they want to eat, so we're putting our trucks in places where people are hungry. So problem one is being solved. The second problem is, well, typically when your truck is out, we're typically doing events with other trucks, or we're in a place where they might have options. And so why would they choose you? And so that was the question that we asked, was, why would they choose us? And so some people are looking for familiarity, like, hey, this looks and feels like something I'm used to. So we have things like tacos and, we do it in our own style, in our own way. We have sandwiches, we have wings, and we do desserts and pastries, and so we do some things that in ways and use some verbiage that people are familiar with so that they can make the connection, and then we allow space for them to ask questions. So usually we allow my mom's usually the cashier, at the food truck. So she's just sharing all of her stories, all of her heritage, all of her, background, and it really gives people insight as to like who we are and our full complement. And then, she can answer those questions as to like why things are a certain way, or what, connecting the bridge essentially to, what they're looking for compared to what we have, and how we can kind of get close to that, whether it's kid friendly, diet friendly, things of that nature. So I think we've strategically put people in places to have conversations and open that dialogue, but then be familiar enough that people are at least open to explore.
Yeah. Talk to me about Guyana, because a lot of people that are listening to this podcast aren't going to really be familiar with Guyana as a country and what it is. So yeah, talk about that for a second.
Yeah. So Guyana is we're close neighbors to you guys over in Colombia. It's one state over, so it's Guyana, Venezuela, and Colombia right there in the northern part of South America. It is the only Caribbean country that's not an island. So when people think of the Caribbean, they obviously think of, the island, or the island vibes, and 99% of the Caribbean is island, and Guyana is the one outlier, that's a part of that organization that considers themselves Caribbean. And so, the education piece is very important to us. Something that we're committed to sharing our story. The Pepper Pot is actually named after the national dish of Guyana. And so pepper pie is a national dish. It's a stew that, you kind of take all your best meats at the end of the year, throw it in a pot, and you just add a little pepper. Like there's so many different peppers, and sweet to heat, that grow in the northern part of South America there. And so you just make a really good stew that you eat with bread, and you typically eat that around the holiday times. And so we really kind of named the business to really highlight, what we are, who we are. We are, representing Guyana, in every way. Guyana is highly sustainable. It's one of the most sustainable countries in the world. And so we showcase that through our packaging, like we use sustainable products, disposable products, and just really have a conscious mentality when we approach, everything that we do to maintain, you know, that aspect of it and just reduce waste. And so, Guyana is just similar to Jamaica, similar to Haiti, Barbados, and these other places, tropical beaches, rainforest, because it's a
Yeah.
part of South America. So it's, heavily forested, um, indigenous birds, hundreds of indigenous birds that you can't find anywhere else. Have the tallest single drop waterfall in the world. We have, parts of Mount Warari, which is a mountain peak that is split between Brazil, Venezuela, and Guyana, and so it's one of the wonders of the world. And so there's just so much to see and do in Guyana that I think there's some newfound interest in tourism that we're welcoming for sure.
Definitely. I know I need to go. I haven't been. I love to explore the Caribbean, so that's
Yeah.
high on my list. But I do love that I get to try the food through you guys, so that's really cool. One thing I've always really been fascinated by is your beverage program. You've got a really interesting beverage program that I think you guys have talked about maybe eventually taking into a CPG capacity. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. We make our drinks in house. Some of our favorites. We, you know, source ingredients, from as far as we can possibly source them. We get ingredients from Guyana, we get casrip, we get, hibiscus flower that we use for our hibiscus tea or our sorrel. We make a mango tea that we, get mangoes from Florida, and when we can source them, and just different ingredients in that way. And so we really just like food. I think that's really the crux of it for us, is that we are food appreciators first. And so we really like good drinks, good food. We use a lot of fresh fruit and fresh vegetables in everything that we do. And so our beverages kind of showcase that. We make them on a weekly basis. We package them on a weekly basis, and then we showcase them on the food truck in every medium that we sell in. And so we've had strong considerations to take it into like a CPG format, and just make it more accessible to customers, and figure out that initiative. And so it's been something that we've pondered on, and we're super interested in.
Interesting. Um, did you work with your parents, or with your mom rather, when you were back in Brooklyn on this, or did you mostly work in the business when it got down to Nashville?
Mm. Yeah, well, I moved here to Nashville when I was about 7 or 8.
Okay, so you were young.
Yeah, I was young. So, but I did help with like shaping patties. Like she would primarily do a lot of like pastries, like the beef patties and the pine tarts and cheese rolls and currant rolls and Solara and all these different desserts. And so, I helped a lot with, kind of rolling dough and some of the mixing and things of that nature. And then, I feel like I can take credit as being her first taste tester. I was taste tester number one. I was just around and interested. I was always interested in what she had going on, and what she was doing in the kitchen.
Yeah, definitely. So this has definitely had like several iterations, like you mentioned. Like at that point, it was more of a pastry concept, right? And then it went to a ghost kitchen in Nashville. There was a trailer at some point. When was the trailer at?
Yeah, we had a restaurant with friends and family. It was Island Breeze Cafe in Madison for a few years, and then from that we had a trailer. They opened the trailer and put it on Charlotte Pike, right outside of Haddock's Pharmacy. That was across from the Burger King. Um, that lot was sold, and so basically they built extended stay hotels there, and um, everyone that was on that lot, had to transition, and so we had a trailer out there. We had two different trailers out there from, I'd say, 2013 to 2017, 2018. So and then we from there she took a break for a few years, and then we started the Ghost Kitchen concept in 2020.
Gotcha. So you guys really have a knack for starting things right in the crux of like financial crises or world changing events. Like you mentioned 0809, right? That was
Yeah,
like the housing crisis. And then
definitely.
2020 COVID, right? Um, what is it about you guys trying to like jump into like the hardest times and start something new? Is it just like it's a good time because it's like a period of change, or like is it just kind of happened? It's not been intentional.
Yeah, it's really, I would say, as I look back at that trend, which, it's interesting that you point that out, is it's kind of like you're in a fight, and do you give up? Do you lay down and accept your fate, or do you just say, "Hey, I'm pulling out all the stops"? And so, one thing I always say is that no one's going to be able to say I left anything on the table. No one's going to be able to say I didn't try it all. And so, I think that's just been a mentality that my mom has had. That's been a mentality, of our family, and just, kind of thinking about perseverance is that you gotta, even in adverse times, you got to try your best and do the most that you can, and then obviously see what the results are from there. And so, when people may have been concerned and scared and fearful, those are times where we've leaned into developing something that can service the community and give people something to be happy about and enjoy.
Definitely, definitely. No, I know that like when the pandemic hit, that was kind of an inflection point for food truckers, not just in Nashville but nationwide. They were wondering
Hmm.
what's next, and the kind of the answer became neighborhoods, right? Go to them, and I think you guys were involved in that as much as we were, right? You guys were going to the neighborhoods as well during that time.
Yeah, some of our earlier shifts were regularly at apartment complexes and neighborhoods and subdivisions. That was some of our earlier, routine locations. We even have now, there's some monthly locations that we go to that are resident based, that, have seen us over the last few years that we consistently, uh, attend. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's been that was a good pivot, I would say.
yeah, definitely. And you guys do a ton of corporate catering. I've seen it, right? Like
Mhm.
I've seen you guys do a ton of corporate catering for Vanderbilt, HCA, et cetera. What kind of gave you an edge in the corporate catering game in terms of like building that business? Because a lot of people want to get into, they know corporate catering is really profitable. It's big volume. It's usually good margins. What's kind of been your edge in terms of like getting good corporate clients?
Yeah. I think for us, and we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, or maybe even off tape, it was that, naturally there is a dietary friendly offering when it comes to Caribbean food, and just how we prepare stuff, keeping the ingredients simple, and just really being inclusive. A lot of vegan, vegetarian options. And so a lot of our corporate clients are looking for that. They want to cover 50 people that, have this myriad of dietary restraints, but everyone be happy about their dining experience. And so we've come in and filled that gap. I feel like that was there. And then we try to strive to be a pleasure to work with. We try to show up on time. We try to have solid communication. We have clients that we text on a weekly basis. It's six-figure clients that, we've only communicated via text to deliver orders. We might not have ever talked on the phone or even in person. And so we just meet them where they are, try to be a pleasure to work with, and be as compliant as possible because they're obviously looking to reduce liability, to offer something that's tasteful, but then cover everyone's dietary restrictions. And so, that's been a real blessing for us. And sometimes it's a stroke of luck. Food truck is a great advertiser. Um, Obviously doing takeout and delivery. We try to let people know in every medium that we meet them that we do all of these other things. And so that's led to some other opportunities for us.
Very cool. Yeah, I've noticed for me
that all
personally.
just, I was just gonna say, did that all build organically? So like people just kind of sort of found out about it, and then like slowly you guys like built client base over time, and then you were just good, so people stayed.
Yeah, it did. And then I guess another thing was like we listened to our clients. So like, we would do takeout and delivery over in West Nashville. So we were close in proximity to the HCAs and the St. Thomas's and the Vanderbilts and those things. And so, as those people came by and tried our food, they would ask questions like, do you do catering, or do you have a food truck? And we have these different events. And so some of our earlier events before we had a food truck, we were doing tent and table setups, we were doing pop-ups, we were doing um, drop off catering, self-serve caterings and things like that. And so, as they were asking questions, the opportunities started to unfold as well. And so, when someone asked us, did we have a food truck? We were like, you know what? Actually, there's a food truck sitting at the kitchen. Let's ask BJ, what he's got going on with that. And so that things kind of did happen organically, and we listened to our customers to see what their needs were. And so, they were looking for like private catering from a food truck perspective, because food trucks, in some instances during COVID, food trucks were the only food options. They didn't allow, you know, um, food to just be sitting out, buffet style, to kind of minimize the risk of COVID at that time. And so, adding an on-site food truck was a solution. And then we quickly developed that solution after listening to our customer. And then they kind of followed through by utilizing our services in that way.
That's super cool, man. I think more people in the restaurant space are going to have to become like multi-channel, right? To where we're going to have to be, hey, you have a food truck, you do catering, you are on platforms, you're, it's not just people coming in and sitting down in a restaurant anymore. It's ghost kitchen, right? Like, it's the way to survive now is being like extremely multi-channel like this. And you guys have done a phenomenal job of that. Like, you guys don't even have a traditional restaurant, really. Yeah, you've got your spot in Germantown there on Taylor Street.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the bane of most people's existence anyways, man. I mean, like the heavy rent, the overhead, having to get people to come to you instead of going to them, meeting with them where they're at. I mean, that's the pain, like that causes a lot of like restaurateurs to like have bad seasons, bad places. No, I think it just like speaks to like what you guys have done, speaks to the ability to like build customer base over time. Daniel has a similar thing where it's like, I don't reach out for gigs anymore. Gigs come to me. And it's like that only happens if you're consistently good over time. And then I think a lot of people don't give that process credit, that it's slow, it takes time, but like over the course of like 5, 6, 7 years, like it happens. And then suddenly like people are coming to you because they're like, hey, I know that like we can get like decent catering, can make everybody happy. They seem to be like easy to work with. Easy. And then you like experience that over and over and over again, and then suddenly you become like the place that people want to come to. I think doing that with a physical restaurant's like 1,000 times harder because people don't want to drive. Like, I think that like, dude, that's the biggest, like, it's the biggest thing that like keeps people from coming, is it's like me and Megan talk about this all the time, but we had like no bake locations we thought would be good, and then they were bad. And I was like, when you think about it, someone has to like get their family in the car, drive there, spend a bunch of money. It's like I'm asking them to take like an hour and a half out of their day, maybe, and I'm also asking them to like spend money with me. Like, better be good. And like, yeah, it was good, but it's like, how good is it? Are they going to come all the time? It's not as addictive as coffee. So it's hard to make physical locations work unless you have like the perfect spot where people already are.
Yeah, I agree.
You guys with the takeout in Germantown, talk to me about like how that developed, because you guys were in Citizen for a while doing the ghost thing, and you kind of continued that at the Taylor Street location in Germantown. How did you learn about Taylor Street, Taylor Arts Building? How did that relationship build? How did that happen?
Yeah, it was our food truck had been there a few times for events. We've done the art market. I had a childhood friend that, had a space in there that would host events and do small gatherings that we would cater or I would just attend. And so, I was always intrigued and fascinated with the building and the collective of offerings in the building. And so they had built a kitchen, didn't really know what direction they were wanting to go in as far as the building management. And, they tried some concepts and, I saw that there was an opening. I reached out, just kind of made contact, was persistent. And at the time, we were realizing that we were really outgrowing our space over at Citizens, which that's what Citizens is for, is an incubator. It's a platform and an opportunity to do your thing and learn and develop and move. And so we felt like it was our time to move out. We were wanting to increase our hours. We wanted to increase our footprint. But we wanted to do that in a strategic way. And so that was a perfect transition for us to still offer, our takeout and delivery business, but not be committed to seating and and table service and having a rigid 5 day, 6 day, 7 day schedule, when it comes to that, and still being able to be fluid. So it really kind of spoke to who we are. And the building kind of just has that ethos as well. Like, all the shops open when they are able to and when they feel like there's the best time to serve their customers. And, they close in other times, and everyone hosts events in different capacities, whether it's small or large or in the event space or outdoors. And so, really kind of gave us the opportunity to find another tribe that, had the same philosophy as us. Coming from Citizens, I think that was something that was important because, everyone over at Citizens was so helpful, and, such a community over there that it's like if we were going to leave that, we needed to go somewhere that we could still, maintain, that same type of ethos.
That's so important, man. Like looking for community in food, because I feel like a lot of people, especially food entrepreneurs, if they don't intentionally like look for and build that community, they can feel really isolated and like they feel like they're on their own on an island. So I think it was really important that you mentioned that like people need to go out and find that community as an entrepreneur, especially in the food space. Like you need that that collective, that village around you that's supporting you, even just emotionally, like when things are rough, and you get a bad truck breakdown or you lose a big gig or whatever. You need people you can lean on when that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, when your tire flies off when you're flying down the road, like that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, just on a Wednesday,
Yeah.
It's crazy some of the things that have happened. But yeah, it's a beautiful thing to have community. And I think truly that's what all of us are striving for. That's what our customers are striving for. And it's almost becoming mandatory, like to either offer or participate in community building because, it really just gives you insight into where people are in the world and how you can engage with them.
So one of my favorite questions to ask everybody, because I love telling these stories, is like, the horror stories, the breakdowns where the wheels fall off, literally. You've been in food truck in a while. You've been in the restaurant game a while. Tell us a few of your like top 3 like breakdown horror stories where things just went sideways on you.
Man, I could tell some stories. I think, well, something similar to a breakdown, similar to what you just experienced, Daniel, and I'm glad that everyone's okay, and it wasn't anything detrimental that happened, because that's usually what you're looking for. It's just like, are we okay? Like, things are gonna happen, but are we okay? And that's the main focus, obviously. And so, I'm a story I would highlight is, we're leaving Citizens last year. We're headed to Bicentennial to do movies in the park. Love movies in the park. Shout out to them. And so we're headed over there, and I'm noticing a little bit of a grind and pop with one of our front wheels, and it just feels weird. So I get on the phone as I'm driving the truck, and it's only about 3 miles. So from 46th Avenue to Bicentennial over in Rosa Parks, it's about a 3-mile drive down Charlotte. And so, taking that drive, there's some hills and inclines and things of that nature. And I'm noticing, especially if I'm having to turn, that there's this grind and pop, and it just feels weird. So along that time, I'm getting on the phone. I call my brother. I'm talking to Warren, because he's in the business full time at that time, and they're at the kitchen, kind of going to be trailing behind soon after. And it's like, man, something feels weird. I don't know what it is, but it feels weird. And then I call, as it continues, every time we kind of do a slight turn or anything of that nature, I call a mechanic. I call a mobile mechanic, and I'm describing what's happening. And they're saying, well, you gotta get somewhere parked and safe. So my goal was, I think a lot of food truckers would do this, so it's to get to the gig.
Yep.
And park. and we'll figure it out once we get there, right? And so that was my goal. And so, lo and behold, there was a few turns that had to happen, and I get to Bicentennial, and I get to the street where the food truck are, and I'm about, let's say, 2 blocks away. I can see the food trucks directly ahead of me, and the wheel on our passenger side collapsed, and I could no longer go forward. And I'm looking, and when I say we sat with the truck and we literally watched movies in the park happen, from 2 blocks away. It felt devastating. It felt like some things that happen in a movie, like you're literally just watching what could have happened for you. A great shift, sunny day, all the trucks making money, lines down the street, and you're just sitting there watching it happen, and waiting on a mechanic and a tow truck to come out. And so, yeah, that was that was an experience. Fortunately, they gave us a rain check, and we did, we got that wheel fixed. And a couple weeks later, we did another event with movies in the park. But that was definitely demoralizing, I would say.
Yeah. And that's really where, like, I think that separates the men from the boys in the, not just food trucking, but in the restaurant game in general, because that happens in restaurants too. You get those, hey, we're about to serve, and our suppression system went off and just ruined all the food, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Have you guys ever watched The Bear? Because I feel like
I love
it's the
that
first show. It's the first show that's like described like what we go through. Because
Totally.
like that type of shit has happened to me so many times. Actually, with food trucks specifically, I don't know what the fuck it is with wheels, but they don't work.
Not,
That's
yeah, they don't. They're not
I think
ideal.
we overload the truck suspension maybe Like
Yeah.
that could be the problem. Like Daniel posted that video like 2 days ago, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
was. I responded to him. I was like, dude, the exact same thing happened to me. And now you're describing the same thing in the same area of town. Charlotte's cursed. That's
Yeah,
what it
it's
is.
crazy. It's
You
the
shouldn't drive.
potholes. Oh my God. They
Like
eating
I had
tires out there.
Daniel was like, yeah, it like almost came off. I was like, no, like my tires, like I saw the hubcap come off in like the rear view mirror, and I was like, that's not good. And then right after that, you saw like a wheel fly off, and
Oh
you were like,
no.
oh shit, that's the whole wheel. And then you just heard
Yeah.
it screech on the ground because there's no more
It's
tire
no
or
more
wheel.
tire. Oh my God. It's
Yeah.
it's definitely, we have a routine maintenance system now,
Nice.
that we try to like check in on these different things and
Right.
just kind of be as proactive as possible,
Yep.
because that can be very devastating. It can really impact your schedule, obviously. You can really you really have a lot of loss from a unexpected event like that. And so, man, I think we all have stories like that around, you know, our feet,
Yeah.
the feet of our trucks.
Man, and there's, food trucking, you win big and you lose big because, yeah, you're sitting there watching this beautiful event happen a couple hundred yards in front of you.
Man,
Yeah,
it's like I can only be happy for everyone, but then,
that's right. Yeah, that's what
just hating.
yeah, you're hating life for a second. At the same time, you're
You're
happy
hating
your
life
buddies
for
are
a
making
second, yeah.
money. Yeah.
Yeah. Duality at its best.
Yeah, exactly.
I
That's
mean, it
it.
is duality, but it's also like you made a good point earlier, Daniel, where like it separates like the men from the boys or like whatever it is. It's like really having like a persistent attitude is important because like bad shit will happen inevitably. Like you're
Mhm.
gonna have horrible things happen and you know it's gonna happen, you just don't know when.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hilarious because even if
Yeah.
you're like maintaining the trucks, even if you're like doing everything you can in your restaurant, occasionally then the problems will come from like people or customers or like whatever
hmm
else it is. And you just have to be ready for it.
hmm Yeah, that is true. You have to be prepared. It's hard for people that are optimistic too, because there's a lot of optimistic people in the industry. I think we all start off optimistic, especially like, hey, we're gonna go out and show the world our stuff. And so I think it's hard on the optimists early, because there is guaranteed negativity. There is guaranteed losses to be had. And so, obviously, you don't, want that, or you don't want to, have, losses in particular categories. But some of the things is you're not going to be able to control. You're not going to be able to make that call. But you have to be prepared as much as possible. So yeah, that's spot on.
Man, I mean,
Isaiah, is there anything that you do to like keep yourself from getting like negative, like personally, like while you're doing this? Because I mean, like this is what you do like every day, day in, day out.
Mhm. Yeah, I've been meditating. I meditate in the mornings, just kind of take a few minutes to myself and just sit with myself, no socials, no notifications, no tabs. I really try to just really unplug daily for a few minutes. And I think that's really helped me. Um, I try to reset on a weekly basis, and just, you know, speaking of open tabs, I might have 20 open tabs on my laptop, in a given day, and just really close everything, clear everything, organize things. And that really helps me with clarity. And because that's really what I've been seeking lately, is clarity. Is just making sure that when I go to perform a task, that I'm doing it with the most clear and concise precision that I can offer. Because obviously, you guys know, as a owner, operator, entrepreneur, you know you're just doing, you're just going. And so we don't always quantify our input, or what we give to the business. And I'll be honest, sometimes I'm not giving my best to a particular thing because I may be doing a multitude of things in that time. And so, just being open and honest with myself that, how do I give the business the best form of me? Hiring for my weaknesses and sometimes even hiring for your strengths, just so that you can continue to do the other necessary functions. I think that's been a delicate balance for us.
For sure, for sure. Well, we're getting close to the end here. Tell the people where they can find you if they want to eat your food, if they want to get to know the Pepper Pot better. Where do they find you, Isaiah?
Yeah, we're the Pepper Pot with two T's all over the place. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, our website. We are on all platforms. We're starting a YouTube just to kind of create more, long form content. And so, yeah, you can find us anywhere at the Pepper Pot with two T's, uh, anywhere in Nashville. Look out for the food truck.
Hell yeah.
Love it. Thanks for coming on, Isaiah.
Thanks for having
I
us, man.
appreciate it, dude.
I appreciate you guys.
It was a good conversation. I think, like, yeah, I mean, if anyone takes anything away from this, it should be just like, stay resilient, like, do something to keep yourself good, and the rest kind of figures it out. I mean, you guys have done a great job building community, building a great business, like doing the thing. I love it.
I appreciate it. Likewise, I always admire you guys, and it's always good to know that, I use the reference of like, this person stops, I'm stopping, and that one of those people is Daniel. I've seen, No Baked in so many different iterations. And it's like,
We've pivoted a lot.
yeah, yeah. And so you guys are in those discussions of like, all right, if they're stopping, then I'll stop. I'll stop when they stop, and so it's a really good, comfortable place to be in, to know that people are pushing as hard, some days harder than you, but everyone's just resiliently, grinding and making things work.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about that. I recently have tried to figure out like how to like do less, similar to like you, so I can like actually do things well.
Mhm.
That has got to be like the hardest thing in the world to do. It's just difficult. I know you struggle with it too, Daniel. He's out here doing everything all at the same time somehow. I could never. When I reference people that work super hard, I'm like, there's Daniel, and then there's like literally everyone else.
It's like everyone else. Yeah. I'm telling you.
It's wild.
No, that's true. That's very true. I agree
All right,
with
guys.
you there.
I will talk to both of y'all later, hopefully. It was great having you on, Isaiah. This has been another awesome episode of the Behind the Food podcast. Everybody subscribe, like, do whatever you do. See y'all later.
Thank you.
Cord.